This is the Crossing Bridges podcast, addressing the topics of leadership, criminal justice, and fatherhood. How can we become better leaders? Where are all the daddies? Why is crime at an all-time high? Here is your host, Bayonle Arashi.
It's another episode of the Crossing Bridges podcast. Always excited, coming your way every time, bringing in thought leaders, great personality, people that have achieved a lot despite the odds that their life could have headed, but they've used either those moments as a moment of strength to make it a moment of value and also go on to inspire others. Especially myself, I have learned a lot from my guests on this show, and I'm sure this particular person I have today, you definitely going to learn more from him. Welcome to the podcast. My name is Bayonle Arashi. It's always my pleasure bringing the podcast to you every week. And like I said, my guest today is going to be a fun one. We're going to be talking about the usual, about the issue of leadership, lack of leaders, quality leaders in our society today, leaders that call a spade, lack of fathers not being responsible for their kids anymore, sometimes not due to them or due to their intention of not wanting to do it, but there's a lot of things going on in the United States, across the world, that is affecting men, and that one of the reasons why this podcast was established, to inspire other men, to encourage ourselves to keep going despite all the odds, and more importantly, how to reduce the criminal justice system, the crowd in our prisons, in our jail, to make young boys add to the society. So, without much ado, I'm going to welcome our guest, Mathew Rawlings, to this episode. Mathew, I'm excited to have you. How are you doing today?
Finally, I'm doing fantastic. I am pumped to be here. We're going to have a great time. I'm ready.
Excellent, man. That you already set it in motion right there. Well, as I always ask my guests, you already heard what the podcast is all about, and I read a few things about you as well. But there is no way I can tell your own story. It is your story, and I think it's a beautiful one. I think others need to learn, as I have said over and over on this podcast, on any of my video that I make, that you can either use those moments of challenge as a way to inspire others, or let it affect you for you to spiral down. So, Mathew, please introduce yourself and what do you do?
Yeah, absolutely, Bayonle. So I'm excited to share stories, but yeah, so I'm a business coach. So I work with successful business owners and entrepreneurs that have built a business, but they've hit that wall, right? They've hit that burnout, that exhaustion, that depression, anxiety, overwhelm. So they've hit that barricade that they can't get past. And so I come in, I partner with them, and I help them with the strategies, the mindsets, the techniques they need to walk through that journey of transformation and get beyond that and get their breakthrough. So I say we take them from the burnout, the bridge, and the breakthrough.
Excellent. That's a very beautiful one. You are already contributing at a very high level, but I am sure that is not how your story started. So, how did you grow up? Where did you grow up? Did you grow up with dad and mom? Do you have siblings? We would love to know this part of you on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So, and I love that you're talking about fatherhood, right? Because I think of like faith. I'm sure your listeners come from all different backgrounds. That like faith in my family, growing up in a Christian household, that was a part of my own personal journey, and so walking that out. And but the Apostle Paul says, right? He says you have many teachers, but few fathers. And so for me, I think in our world, and this is the same 2,000 years ago, in our world, there's many people that want to write a book, tell you what they think, but there's very few people that want to be a father. And to me, a father it's someone that sees who God designed you to be, and then they're coming alongside of you to cultivate and curate the gift within you, and to do that relationally and out of connection. So that's just, I love that you're focusing on fatherhood. But yeah, my own journey. So I grew up in a really good, safe, loving Christian family. So that was like such a gift. My mom and my dad very loving. My father passed away from skin cancer when I was 2. So he was probably 37 when he died. So I'm 35 now. So it's crazy to be like, wow, he was a couple years older than me. But, when you're a kid, you don't know what you don't know. So I didn't know that was abnormal. My mom was just a rock star, so strong, and raised 4 of us kids alone for 4 years. And then she got married again to my father now. And so a lot of people have blended families, right? Whether through death or divorce. So I totally understand the journey of a blended family. My mom and dad, so they got married and then they had another child. So blended family of kids and parents, but really, really good. And then, so that's kind of where it started. A couple of highlights in my life of that journey. Had kind of a mental breakdown in high school. There's this perfect storm of a faith crisis, an identity crisis, right? That coming of age from a boy to a man. That's a hard journey. Like anywhere in the world, that's to go from boy to manhood. That's like just a hard journey. And so, right, like stepping into being a man, stepping into figuring out my faith for myself, not what do my parents believe, but what do I believe? And then just this storm of anxiety and depression and overwhelm, and kind of had this just mental breakdown. And yeah, I'm so grateful for it. It's a part of my journey, and it's why I'm here today. And so, yeah, that was kind of a peak point. And I think some of the business stuff, I've always been fascinated by helping people and nurturing people and loving people and connecting with people. And so some of that journey of seeing people suffer, seeing myself suffer, and then wanting myself and others to find their breakthrough is kind of on a quick nutshell is part of what brings me here today.
Absolutely, Matthew. That's a very powerful story. And you mentioned 2 things that are very, very very interesting, that I think is a strong takeaway for me. And I think that's where my next question is going to come from. The fact that when you lost your dad, and I'm very sorry for that, at a very young age, your mom, I think I'm just saying on your behalf, I'm saying thank you to her today for doing such an amazing job with 4 kids, left by herself, but knowing the fact that our children, they need a father figure in their life. Make that decision, not a selfless one, I'm going to say, to still make sure her kids grow up under a roof that has both parents cohabitating. I think special shout out to her on that one. I'll cut this particular one out and post it, and maybe you can show it to mom. That's a very, very strong point. I think that probably set your life in a better trajectory to where you are today. The second thing that you mentioned, that I think my other question will be on is, when the mental health issue kicked in, and you were right by saying when from boyhood to adulthood for a boy child is actually the most difficult stage of their life. I have my story, but it's not about me today. But what do you think mom did, that you think you forever appreciate? I mean, you already said it now, about raising 4 of you and then having another kid. But what is it that you think she did then that you can remember very, very well, that you think was a very lifelong lesson for you?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And just to clarify, so are you talking about what did she do during that time when I was kind of having that mental breakdown, or just during that time when she was raising us kids alone?
When she was raising you guys up.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and that's a great question. What did she do that was really pivotal in our lives as she was raising us? And I'll backtrack to what you said about her remarrying. I think it is so powerful to have a mother and father in my life. My dad was the best man at my wedding, and is a dear friend of mine. Yeah, yeah. So one of my best friends. But I'll say, like, I think sometimes people could rush to get married thinking that, oh, my children need a father. And it's like, actually what they need are healthy, safe, godly, loving parents. And I would rather, like, so just on that part, like I would rather, it worked out that, hey, my mom married someone amazing, but I would rather that a single mother take the time to make sure that her home and family are safe and loving, and that they married someone that was really going to be loving and not rush into it. That's all I would say there.
That's a very good answer, and I really appreciate you chipping in that one. Now, during that moment,
Yeah.
during those particular moments in your life, what were you in your final grade in high school, or were you in grade 11, or at what point did you suffer that mental breakdown,
Yeah.
and what was the magic? How did you come out of that um hellhole, so to
Yeah.
say, and be able to shift your mindset
Yeah.
to jump out of it and become who you are today?
Yeah, no, that's really good. And just backtracking to what you had said, like I think something my mom did, just on answering that question, I think my mom has always offered us children unconditional love all the way through. Like our kids, all the kids are very different. One went into the military, one went into journalism. One of us was a teacher. We all took very different paths, but my mom, always at a young age, loved us unconditionally, made us a priority, and made us feel like she always had time to be with us. And she was always there for us. So I think that was such a game changer. But yeah, the mental breakdown. So it was senior year in high school. I was passionate for God and really wanted to make an impact for the world, for Jesus. And I was just, my heart was kind of gripped by the story of Jesus and the gospel. And so I was in my high school. Really, we would have a weekly kind of Bible study, but I'm also like an intense guy. And so I have so much energy and passion. So it was this time where kind of all of that focus and drive turned back inward on me. And I kind of began to self-destruct. And so I think, what was the key to the breakthrough there? To some degree, I think it was, I don't know that there was a magic. It was that I graduated high school and I went and stayed with my aunt and uncle a few hours away, and I spent time with them. So to some degree, it was taking me out of a really intense situation. So high school, I had kind of pressurized a situation in high school where I felt like I put all this pressure on myself to be this spiritual leader and to do great things for God. And so it's kind of this desire to do good things, but I put so much pressure on myself. So I think some of the breakthrough for me was being able to pull myself out of an intense situation. And so I think if there's a lesson there, it's that, hey, sometimes there's no magic in the moment. It's just, hey, you go through hell and you just walk it out. There's nothing that's going to take you out of it. And then someone's like, hey, if you're in a bad situation, can you extract yourself from it? Can you get out of it? Can you leave? Can you walk away? And sometimes you need to stay and fight, and other times you need to walk through it and just get to the other side of it. So that's kind of where my mind goes there.
That's a great response, man. What I'm going to ask next is, now that you had that particular situation and you were able to get out of it, but I'm sure it was not just by you moving out of that zone that you said you were. There
Yeah.
must have been a process, there must
Yeah.
have been actions taken, there
Yeah.
must have been things that you did.
Yeah.
I want to share that because this is one of the areas
Mhm.
that the podcast stands for. Because,
Yeah.
like I said, that area, you use the word, you said self-destruct. A lot
Yeah.
of people, when in that moment when that self-destructing is happening,
Yeah.
they never have a chance to come back.
Yeah.
The destruction goes on and take them to the hellhole from
Yeah.
there. But
Yeah.
you had the opportunity, you had the grace to be able to get out of there. Thank you, Lord, for giving you that grace.
Yeah.
But what was the process that
Yeah.
went into the survival?
Yeah. That's really good. That's really good. And so I think there's three things walking through that mental breakdown. And I think a lot of people can probably relate to going through times of intense overwhelm, anxiety, depression, and pain and suffering. So I think there's three things. One, I had a really strong supportive network. So my mom, my dad, people in my life that came around me and saw, hey, Matthew's really struggling. He's having a hard time thinking through life well. He's having a hard time with pressure and everything. So I had a really strong supportive network that came around me. That was a huge blessing in my life. And then 2, I would say that, again, like I said before, the process was, for me, the difficulty was the pressurized situation. And so I passed through that experience and made it to the other side. So I would say it was a supportive network. It was passing through it. So just walking it out, for me. So the connections, walking it out. And then the third one I would say is not so much for that one, but I would say going forward, I now have a map, a little bit better of a mental map of a mental, emotional map of who I am. And so now there's been many times where I've felt intense relationships or intense situations, and I can feel myself like, oh, I know that car goes off the cliff. And so I would say the third thing is, on this side of that mental breakdown, I have this map and understanding of what to avoid, what toxic relationships to cut out, what mistakes not to make again, so that I don't ever get to that point where it's all too much and I just kind of implode.
Excellent, woman. So was it like you read a book? Did you take a trip? Did you have to travel? What other things went to it? I mean, so having a
Yeah.
support system
Yeah.
is a no-brainer. I mean,
Yeah.
thank God you have that.
Yeah.
That's one of the things why
Yeah.
we mentioned earlier that having a very strong parent and family background
Mm-hmm.
always go a long way in
Yeah.
shaping us to help us to be who we are. But for
Mm-hmm.
you, going from that particular situation,
Mm-hmm.
what were the actions that you took
Yeah.
in between those things? I
Yeah.
would love you to share it as much as you can.
Yeah. And if you don't, I think some of the breakthrough that I had came in the coming years. Do you mind if I kind of share the process after? Okay. So, because in part, I think in part, it felt like being in a battle scene, like people throwing hand grenades and a war zone. And so in the moment of that breakdown and that pain and suffering, there wasn't a lot of clarity. But I would say that moment, that time in high school, sent me on a journey to become stronger and healthier. So I would say, going forward, the journey that I went on, and some of this you might not expect, but it was in part in my body. So I began to go on a journey of, I can feel anxiety in my body. I can feel that yucky, disgusting feeling when I know that things aren't right. You can feel depression, anxiety, just that brokenness in my body. So in part of the process for me to come to a strong place was a journey in my body. So that looked like I began to really take care about, what am I eating? What am I putting into my body? And this might sound funny, of like, well, wait, like, what does that have to do with, crushing life and living life at the best and the peak? But it's like, we have 3 things. We have a body, a soul, and a spirit. And so sometimes we neglect a third of that. And so I began to, for instance, I wasn't sleeping. Like, if you don't sleep well, you will go insane. I've realized through my own life, like, when I'm not sleeping well, I'm irritable. I'm a bad version of myself. I'm not thinking right. So in part, honestly, this alone was a game changer. I just wasn't sleeping well. And once I got to actually start sleeping well, my body and my mind started to regulate. So I would say, in part, I went on a process of learning how to eat, learning how to cook food and prepare food and nourish my body, learning how to work out. And man, when I go for a 30-minute run, if I'm feeling anxious, I feel so good. Or learning breath work, learning a method called Wim Hof breath. But there's a lot of different methods, learning breath work, taking ice baths, these things that put my body into such a calm, centered, powerful state. And I'm sure you as an athlete know, right? Like, man, you go for a run for an hour, you feel like liquid gold. If you're, it's just, so I would say in part it was body, in part mind, learning to, and I'm still on this journey, learning to pay attention to the voice inside. What is the conversation I'm having, and beginning to change that. Like, oh, I actually don't want to say that. So I'd say learning to care for my body, learning to change the voice in my head, and learning to, I would say, relationships. Again, I would say learning to spend time with positive, powerful people in my life that really build me up. So I would say relationships, my body, and the narrative inside my head would be some of the big game changers.
That is such a great response. I mean, I'm just going to corroborate what you said, and
Yeah.
you already gave me that applause. I don't see myself as an athlete, but then I'm thankful that you said that. But
Yeah.
I have to agree with you. At my own, just as we said, my own lowest moment when I hear some news about my mom, for example, or maybe I'm going through some sort of heartbreak of one way or the other in the business or marriage or whatever. I found that physical exercise, it's miraculous. It is magical.
It is.
It has so much power. And you just said it. Going
Yep.
for a 30 minute run of less than 3 miles can change your whole system and your whole vibe and your own way of feeling. And then you also mentioned what I think I read as changing of pattern in Tony
Yep.
Robbins' book. I'm an avid book reader, and I think it's
Mm.
one of the things that has helped me a lot in life. He
Yeah.
calls it change of pattern of when a negative thought comes to you or
Mm-hmm.
when a negative feeling comes to you, the capacity for you to be able to stop yourself and say, okay, no, I don't want to think that, or I don't want to behave that way, and then
Mm-hmm.
be able to replace those negative thoughts and feelings
Yeah.
with previous exciting moments that you've had,
Yeah.
previous joyous moment that you've had. Always change your state immediately, and this
Mm-hmm.
works every time. It is
Yep.
just that we human beings don't use it enough.
Yep.
So I'm very happy that you mentioned that going forward,
Yeah.
now that you are into coaching
Yeah.
and helping other people, how did you journey into this way of work that you do right now? I know you already said it, that you have always been looking for service, to service people, to
Yeah.
help people. How did you find yourself on this path?
Yeah. That's a good question. And so I've been on this journey of asking. I'm thinking deeply, or maybe not so deeply, but I'm thinking at least about life, and I'm always pondering stuff. And so, yeah, for the last decades of my life, since I was 15 and beyond, I've been thinking about what's my mission in life, what's my purpose, what am I called to, what's my gifting, what was I designed for? And I think we all think about that. And so the thing that keeps coming back to me is there's this thing in me, I've always been drawn to nurturing people, caring for people, and yeah, loving people, taking care of people. That's kind of been that caretaker in me. And so match that with the skill set. So there's over the last years, there's been different times where I've leaned into coaching where I've the time spending time with people, I realized, man, this is what I really love. When I'm with someone and I see that aha moment, or I'm with someone and I see the lights come on and they take massive action and they change their life. For me, it's like drugs. It's like cocaine. That's a bad analogy, but it's just like, man, it feels, it's an amazing feeling. Yeah. It feels so good. So I would say it's knowing, and I've done, so I built an Airbnb business. I built a neighborhood magazine here in Southeast Portland and sold it. And so I've tried a lot of different things, and my family will tell you, I've made a lot of mistakes. I've failed at a lot, but I failed forward. And so I've come to this place where I'm like, I know that, and I don't have it all figured out yet, but I'm like, I know that what I love doing is working with people, seeing people become the best version of themselves, and finding my place with working with other business owners. So.
Excellent one. So right now, who are your clients? How do you engage the public? How do you
Yeah.
engage society? Who are the people
Yeah.
that are your target audience? And how do you what are the platforms that you use in approaching it? You already said what your purpose is, and I'm very
Yeah.
excited for you.
Yeah.
And I believe the future is so bright.
Yeah.
But how do you engage
Mm.
these people that you are looking forward to help become better? And thank you. Of course, you're already doing that on the podcast right now, and I'm sure a lot of other people will listen to
Yeah.
this and they will use it, your story, to be able to also impact their life. But I want I want you to tell us more.
Yeah. Yeah. So so are you wondering, how do I find them, or just what's the process that I take them through?
What is the process exactly? What's the process that you take them through, and how do you engage them on what platforms? What
Yeah.
do you do? How do you engage with them?
Yeah, great question. Great question. So, there's the technical side, and then there's the process side. So, on the technical side, I'm a big video person, so I have a YouTube channel, and that's been fun, putting out episodes and shows of my own, and being a guest. So I love engaging people, and I will get lost in YouTube for hours. So, engage with my audience and my clients on YouTube, and then we have a group coaching experience. So there's a small group of people that I work with where we do a group coaching setting, so they get to build relationships and build accountability partners and friends to walk through that journey that can be so lonely. So they build relationships with each other in a tribe. We get a group coaching experience. So as I'm coaching them, they get to learn from each other, and then that's kind of how they start their breakthrough, right? It's the content, it's the connection, and then it's the coaching. So content, connection, and coaching that's kind of some of the process. But we take them through this process. I think I may have said it before of you start with burnt out. Where's your burnout? What's your bridge? Find your breakthrough. So the burnout, the bridge, and the breakthrough is kind of what we go through.
Excellent. Zig Ziglar said it all. He said, if you want a lot of success, you have to help as many people as you can. And I'm excited you are doing that. On this podcast, I
Yeah.
never let my guests go or finish up without me asking them
Yeah.
these 3 or 4 key questions that I think
Mm.
if we can ask every young man, young
Yep.
woman out there, I've gotten different response, and also now it's your turn to
Yeah.
give your own best position today. And the first of them is one of the questions I always ask myself. I always say, do you think leaders are born or they are made?
Mm. Come on, Bayonle. That's such a great question, right? It's such a great because we have these movies that we see that's like, oh, these leaders, these epic leaders that we want to follow. I think it's both, right? I think it's both. One of my mentors and leaders, Bruce Stefanik, who's a pastor at my church, he would talk about leadership is it's two sides to a coin. He would say it's skill and it's heart. And he would talk about King David, and he would say, King David had the heart that was right that you can't teach. And then he developed skill to become trained as a skillful leader. So I think it's both. I think there's people that you see, right, that you're like, they might not have gotten a lot of training, but there was just this God-given call and gift within them that like people want to follow them. There's a strength and a confidence and a power. And then I also think that, you know what, if you're not a great leader, if you're shy, if you don't talk well, if you're any of those things that you can learn, you can grow, you can develop into becoming a powerful leader. There's nothing you can't do. So I think it's both.
Wow, that's a very great response, and no surprise. I just told you. I said I get different response to this question every time I ask them, and you just went so deep into the Word of God in there, talking using the example of the greatest warrior
Mm-hmm.
in the Bible, King David, as an example there, and that is so right. My second question is being called from what you said at the beginning of this podcast about your dad being your
Yeah.
best man at your wedding. And that question will be, what do you think makes a good man?
It's such a good question. Um, and these are some of the things that I'm the questions on my heart over the last years have been like God, not culturally. I'm gonna ask it, but these are the questions that I ask myself. Like I say, Lord, not culturally, because every culture is different. But how did you? There's so many opinions that we can have of what a man is, and that changes century to century and nation to nation. So it's like, what is a man? What is a husband? These questions, I'm like, Lord, how did you really design this? So I think it's a great question, and it's one I'm honestly still asking and still on a journey. I can't say that I have the exhaustive answer to, but I would say what makes a good man. I think it's a couple things, but I think it's two things. It's on the one hand tenderness. So a man, right? that power, that strength, a man that can have control over his own being. Like that's what makes a good man, that a good man knows when to fight and when to pick up the sword. And a good man knows when to lay down the armor and the sword and offer love and gentleness and tenderness. And I think as a man, that's so hard to know, because sometimes we cut the people we should hug and we hug the people we should cut. So that for me, I think what it makes a good man is, and my wife and I talk about this all the time. Sometimes I come back with a harsh response, or I come back a little bit too intense. I have that testosterone running through my brain, and I'm like, hey, Matthew, check yourself. Like, this is not your wife is not the person you need to fight. You need to bring it down. You need to speak gently, and you need to love. And then there's other times where maybe I've been passive, where I'm like, hey, Matthew, that person is taking advantage of you or someone you care about. You need to engage and fight. So I think at the baseline, I think a good man is someone that keeps his word and is trustworthy. He knows how to offer his strength when it's needed, and he knows how to have self-control and be gentle and tender when it's needed.
Wow, that is so great. You just sounded like a younger version of Dr. Jordan Peterson there. I'm very sure you know him.
I do.
One of his definition of a man is having the capacity and the ability to be dangerous.
Yep.
You must be dangerous,
Be a
and
monster.
then you have to control it.
Yep.
Absolutely, that's a great response, Matthew. The second question, original second question,
Yep.
is one of my favorite as well. Is there one favorite quote that you live by? I always
Mm.
share mine. I have a couple of
Yeah.
them, but one
Please.
that is always very quick to me is the one by Tony Robbins, greatest mentor, one of the greatest mentors that I have, which says, "Change is automatic, but
Yeah.
progress is not." He
Mm.
said, "If you want to, either you like it or not, your body is going to change. You're going to grow
Mm.
older. Nothing can stop that." But he said, if you want to make progress, you have to put in the work. So, what is
Yeah.
your own favorite quote that you live by?
Man, that's great. And I was thinking about this. I don't know if I have one that rolls out of my tongue a lot, but one that comes to me is this quote it's from The Best Exotic Marigold Hotel, which is a great movie if you've never seen it. But in it, it takes place in India. So the young Indian man that's the owner, he says, "In the end, it will all be okay. And if it is not yet okay, it is not yet the end." And for me, I can be such an intense dude. I can be such I want to live big. I want to dream big. I want to go for it, that I can put so much pressure on myself. And that when things don't happen the way I want, I can just get down about it. And for me, remembering, you know what, Matthew, in the end, it's going to be okay. And if things aren't okay, it's not the end, man. You're still in the fight. You got breath in your lungs. You're awake. You're okay, man.
Wow, that is a beautiful one. If in the end it's gonna be okay, and if it is not okay, that means the end hasn't come yet.
That's right.
Fantastic one. Last but not the least,
Come on.
as we are running off on the podcast today,
Love it.
you're already in a leadership capacity. I'm very excited for your future, and I want to say thank you for what you do. But there's going to be one or two leadership lessons that you've learned over the
Yeah.
years. And one of the things you have also done on this platform that you said is your vulnerability of
Yeah.
your failures in starting businesses. That you say you've done a couple of business that you didn't do
Yeah.
well. That's what I think a lot of people do not talk about. A lot of people just come out here and talk about
Mhm.
how easy it is and making people think that is how
Yeah.
easy it's going to be for everybody. So, what is one leadership lesson that you've learned that you are hoping to share with us on the podcast today as we say bye bye?
Come on. Yeah. The two things. I'll respond to yours and then share my own. Yeah. The one part is you've got to be willing to fail, right? And so many times people, it's hard to share the process that we're in now, right? Like I'm in a process now, right? Like there are things that I suck at right now. There's things that I'm weak at right now that I'm trying to become better at. And I'm sharing some of the things that I've grown and be strong about. So I think embracing failure, that like there is no other way but making mistakes. So fail big, go for it. Like just try and fail as big as you can, as boldly as you can. Just go for it. Like you're going to make a mess. Just try, just give it a shot. Like you got one life, take a crack at it, man. Like go for it. So just in response to what you're saying there. And I would say, yeah, a leadership lesson that I feel so strongly about is, it starts with leading ourselves first. And if I would say, I would talk to our audience, I would say, hey, if you're watching this right now, and if I could just reach through the screen and tell you, like, you were designed for something. There's a call, there's a gift, there's a mission, there's a purpose, and you were meant to be the leader of your own life. You were meant to be, as Myron Golden will say, you were meant to be the king of your thing or the queen of your scene, right? Like, you were made to rule and reign on this earth and do something magnificent. And so I believe, like, one of the greatest leadership lessons is, look, like, start where you were at today. Like, start now, do it now. And if you're burnt out and overwhelmed and anxious and depressed, it doesn't disqualify you. So one of the best leadership lessons for me is, hey, you were prepared for something right now, right today. Don't wait. Just start today. You could be a high schooler and watching this. You could be 85. There's something that God gave you to do today. Just go out and get going.
Wow, Mathew, thank you so much, man.
Yeah.
I mean, look at the amount of information and resource you have shared on the podcast. I think this is probably going to be one of the best episodes of the podcast so far. I really appreciate you coming to share your journey and your thoughts and your experience with folks listening and watching the podcast. Quickly, as a success leadership coach that you are,
Yeah.
if anyone wants to find you on social media, how can they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you're able to put notes in the show notes, but one, shoot me an email. I'd love to connect. We've got spots for a couple spots. So if you're a business owner, or you want to be a business owner or an entrepreneur, we've got a couple spots in our group coaching program. So email me at matthewrawlins.inc@gmail.com. I don't know if you're able to toss that in the show notes. And then as well, I've got a YouTube show. So I'm having conversations like this. I'm putting out my own content. And so it's just my name, Mathew Rawlins, but my handle is Mathew Rawlins 503. So those are a couple of best ways. Shoot me an email or hop on my YouTube channel, and look forward to seeing everyone in the game.
There you have it. Shoot him an email. The email is right on the screen right now. And if you're listening on all podcast streaming platform, kindly send an email to that email, matthewrawlins.inc@gmail.com, and then he will take it further from there. That's what this podcast is for, to help all the guys, to help all the young men and women looking to make a difference, looking to find their purpose or develop their purpose in this world. It is the least that we can do on this podcast. Thank you very much once again for coming, Mathew. And that's the episode on this week episode of Crossing Bridges podcast. I'm really excited. I really enjoyed myself, and I'm sure you did as well. Till I see you guys same time next week, God willing. I'm always rooting for you, like I always say. Make sure you find that purpose, find that thing that you love to do. If you haven't found it yet, don't stop. Keep searching, keep reading, keep asking questions. Don't be entitled. The world is not fair, and it's not going to be fair, but keep searching and keep hoping, and then your life will take a greater shape. I'll see you guys next time, God willing. Have a good one. Bye-bye now.
Thank you for listening to the Crossing Bridges podcast with Bayonle Arashi. Your comments, suggestions, and ideas are welcomed. Follow Bayonle on all social media platforms at Bayonle Arashi, or visit www.bayonlearashi.com for coaching and speaking engagements. See you next time.